Thank you for listening to the Week 19 edition of the Base on Balls podcast. I am joined tonight by Paul Bracton as we discuss the Week 19 results and do a playoff preview for round one. Bracton and Paul, how are you guys doing tonight?
Upset that I didn't make the playoffs, but optimistic for the future of the Bismarck Larks, and I congratulate Paul on officially winning the battle for the 7th seed like we've been talking about for the last 19 weeks. So good for Paul, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later, but happy to be here tonight.
Yeah, piggybacking on what Braxton said. I did get the 7th seed. Kind of treated these last 2 weeks as must wins, and I did end up getting 2 wins. And now I'm in the playoffs, and happy to be here. Obviously, this year for me, it's been documented that I started off tough, and then I did my fire sale, retool, whatever you want to call it, and I like my minor league system where it is. And to still make the playoffs, I think really well to my team and my chances for this year and in the future.
Absolutely. And with that, guys, we will jump into Week 19 matchup. I guess we'll go ahead and discuss Paul's matchup where he won and clinched the 7th seed, where he took down Tita's Nashville Sounds 723 to 534. Paul, what did you see with your matchup and earning that 7th seed last week?
So for this matchup, it's the Julio Rodriguez show. He was the best batter in baseball all of last week, and 120 points for that. Leading my team to 416 points for their bats. And then 307 from the arms. Solid bullpen performances. I think 5 saves this week, which is something I've been after this whole year. Trying to improve my bullpen ever since I was like an idiot traded away the best closer in baseball with Bautista. But I've also really built my arms up to the point where I kind of like where I'm at there. Pablo Lopez was decent. Eduardo Rodriguez decent. So yeah, it was a good performance this week. Tita had his down week, which was fortunate for me. He only dropped 534, so it was good overall.
And Bracton, what did you see with this matchup?
Yeah, like Paul mentioned, Tita had a down week. Only put up 534 when this Fantrax projected this game to be around a 15-point difference. It obviously was not that. So hopefully Tita can rebound during the playoff this week because he got a lot of underperformances from a lot of his big guys, but we'll see what he can do there. But as long as Pauls continues to roll here, maybe he has a shot against Cody in the first round. So definitely some interesting storylines to move off of this game, but this was also the official nail in my coffin as I also lost this week, but this ended the season for me. So congratulations again to Paul, but hopefully Tita can rebound as well.
Yeah, Paul's team really stepped up when he needed it to the most, 723 points. A very balanced showing, 307 points from the pitching, 416 points offensively. And as he mentioned, Julio Rodriguez, Paul paid a lot to get him. It's been kind of he hasn't been bad by any means, but I'm sure he's been more of what Paul wanted more out of him after he traded for him. And I think he finally got, what he was looking for, a 120-point week. Like Paul said, he was the best hitter in baseball last week, and it was just too much for the Sounds to handle, who did have a down week. Ultimately, for Tita and the Sounds, it really didn't affect much in terms of the seeding for him. So, Tita can kind of lick his wounds and go into the playoffs, but Paul definitely goes in as a 7 seed on a very high note. So definitely congrats are in order for Paul and the Norfolk Tides. We will move on now. Wait, somebody have something to say? No? Okay. We will move on now to the other matchup that had a lot of playoff implications in terms of seeding. The Clearwater Beach Dogs get back in the win column against Bracton's Bismarck Larks, 665 to 610. Bracton, I know this was tough. Your team played good, but it just wasn't good enough in Week 19. What did you see with this matchup?
Just the big guys let me down. 22 points from Ellie Dela Cruz, 0 from Henry Davis, 17 from Vlad Jr. Just isn't going to cut it. I mean, none of these guys particularly did that great. I got some okay pitching starts, but the usual suspects let me down. Josiah Gray, Patrick Sandoval both went negative. Randy Vasquez only had a point. I mean, it just didn't go my way this week, and it's okay. I mean, there were definitely some bright sides to my season. Ellie Dela Cruz came up and balled despite his off week this week. Anthony Volpe looks like he's going to get 20 and 20 as a rookie. Alex Bregman continued to ball, might be a good trade piece in the offseason. Like, my team is definitely going to need some work for sure, but I think that there's noticeable improvement if we're looking at a yearly basis here. I think that this was a better season than last season. There's more talent here this year than there was last year, but I'm open to doing a lot come this offseason. Maybe big guys move like Vlad, Bregman, those types of players, but I definitely am open for business. So definitely reach out to me after the Champions Crown, because there'll be work to do for sure. So, but congrats to Hen Dog. I know that he and I have been going back and forth for a couple of weeks just about this week and everything, and I think we definitely lived up to the hype as far as close goes. I know I had a lead for a little bit, and then he took it back, and then he just kind of ran with it over the weekend. So congrats to him, and best of luck in the playoffs. We'll see what happens.
And Paul, what did you see with this matchup?
So I'll echo a little bit what Bracton was saying, especially in terms of his bats. I do think he has a really solid base. Ellie, Volpe, Josh Lowe probably are guys that he's going to keep. Guys that you can build around for sure. And then, with his pitching, there's some guys there I think he'll keep, like Mackenzie Gore, Bryce Elder, Andrew Abbott, I'm assuming, Duvall. So he has a good base, and if you have a good base, you can always build on a good base. It'll be interesting to see where he wants to take that base, if he wants to trade older guys like Bregman maybe for, a prospect package maybe. Or if he wants to, get more older established guys. As everybody knows with Bracton, he likes the young guys. So I assume he'll go young. But it'll be interesting this offseason to see where he goes. And as for Hen Dog, he had a good week this week. He bounced back. Bo Bichette's back. So he's primed. He's ready for the playoffs, and we'll see what he can do.
Absolutely. Seeing the Beach Dogs kind of bounce back from a little rough end of the season. I don't think Hen Dog was probably super excited with the way the last 2 or 3 weeks had went, but to see the team bounce back and have a strong performance. The Beach Dogs are definitely one of the scariest teams in the playoffs, in my opinion. A team that I know personally, if I can advance, I hope I don't run into them. Like Paul mentioned, getting Bo Bichette back is huge for this team. There's kind of been a hole at shortstop for Clearwater since Bichette went down. Hen Dog made the trade at the deadline for Dansby Swanson. Dansby's a good player, but obviously not what Bichette can bring to this team. So I know Hen Dog's got to be feeling good after this performance and to go into round one of the playoffs on a high note. As for Bragton, really, really tough way to kind of have your season in there at week 19. You've got the trade deadline 2 weeks before that, and I know that Bragton and Paul and they really had a tough time kind of deciding what route they wanted to go. In my opinion, both guys kind of went for it. Both guys wanted that 7th seed, and came really close. Came down to basically the end of the week. There would have been I think either team was worthy of it. I know Paul's glad to get it. A tough way for the season end for Bragton. But this team, as Bragton mentioned, I mean, a lot of talent on this roster. I would say that pitching is where he needs the most help. Now, of course, if you look at this matchup, his pitching actually outscored his offense. Pitching was 314. Offense was 296. So, he really didn't get the performance that he was used to out of his offensive bats. But I really don't think that offense is the problem for the Larks. I think that maybe some moves, pitching, maybe try to find a little more consistent guys. You may have to kind of go a little older, but there's opportunity to improve this team and build on this going into next season. So we will move along now. Let's see here. Let's discuss the upset of the week. Chad's Oklahoma City Dodgers take down Bry's Rocky Mountain Vibes 591 to 573. Paul, what did you see in this matchup that I believe left us all shocked?
So I think this has kind of been building a little bit for Chad. He's quietly made some really good moves, I think. But at the end of the day, it is still a shock because Bry is a playoff team and Chad's one of the worst teams in the league record-wise. But it's kind of the same thing I said about Bragton that I'll say about Chad's team. He has a really solid base of players. Ha-Seong Kim, Harold Ramirez was pretty good this week. He's got good catching with Gabriel Moreno, Kybert Ruiz. I mean, he's got good players, especially with the bats. He obviously needs work on the pitching, but the first 10 draft picks of this upcoming draft is where Chad's going to make his money. As for Bry, so he's a playoff team. He's competing this week. It's going to be tough. It's hard for me to see where his team has just taken an absolute dive because it's taken an absolute dive. Can it rebound? Of course it can rebound, but Logan Allen 55 this week, Zach Eflin 31, but Hunter Green, I know a guy. He's been a guy that has been hurt this year, but I know Bryant is relying on him to be the pitcher that we all know he can be. So he needs to improve on that negative 18 pretty quick. Same thing with Jesus Luzardo, who had a bad start this week. So if you start kind of adding up the bad starts, you can kind of maybe see where he lost this week. But it's playoff time now, and if you have bad performances from guys that you depend on, it's going to send you home.
Absolutely. And Bragton, what did you see with this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I know Bry lost a close one, like we've been talking about, but I think Paul hit it. Negative 18 from Hunter Green, Jack Flaherty minus 13, and Jesus Luzardo minus 10. That's what happened there. Like, if those guys go anywhere near positive, then Bry wins, and it's really not. I mean, it's close, but it's not that he doesn't lose. Is what I'm trying to say. Like that, those three guys going negative really hurt him. He had some negative streams, which are pretty rare for him. I mean, I'm not panicking on Bry. I think that he's going to be fine. I think he'll win his playoff game against. Crap, I'm blanking. Sorry, somebody help me out. Who's he playing in the first round? I don't know why I'm blanking. He playing Tita?
He's playing Jaime.
Okay.
Yeah, Jaime.
Yeah, I still think he can beat Jamie or Jaime. I still think he can win that, but I don't know. He needs to have those guys that he relies on, like Paul said, step it up. But the bats were good. I mean, 76 from Devers, 39 from Matt McLean, 54 from Marcelo Zuna. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I'm not panicking on Bry. I think he'll be all right. But props to Chad, even though he had a rough.
Bragton.
Did we lose Braxton?
We may. Yeah, we lost Bragton. So, but as for the Rocky Mountain Vibes and Oklahoma City Dodgers matchup, want to give a huge shout out to Chad. Week 19 team is completely out of any kind of playoff contention, and honestly, kind of took himself out of being in last place and his pick being the first overall. It doesn't really matter because he's got all the first round picks. But at the end of the day, Chad, managed well, put together a good fight, and made a huge upset. And as for Bry, the offense played well, 346 points, but this pitching performance, 227 with as many arms as he used, that's really, really got to be disappointing. I think he can correct that. I wouldn't say it's necessarily time to panic. I will say, he's playing Jaime in the playoffs, and I don't think that, he can really afford a week in the 500s. I think he's going to have any shot next week break 600. I know Bry's going to be looking to kind of right the ship quickly. There's not a lot of time. And, Jaime is a very tough opponent. But congrats, Chad. Awesome win in Week 19. And we will move on now we'll talk about mine and Connor's matchup. The Hot Rods take down the Amarillo Sod Poodles 795 to 401. Paul, I'll let you jump in on this. What did you see with this matchup?
Yeah, so Cody, your bats alone outscored Connor's team this week by 100, over 100, which is just obviously really impressive. The bats you've accrued and accumulated over the course of the season, I mean, they're at the top, if not the top, of each position. So obviously, I'm not looking forward to going against any of those guys, especially my two guys, being Adley and Gunner. And obviously, the pitching, everybody kind of stepped up for you this week. 293. It's a little lower than your usual, but still really, really good. For Connor, a bit of a disappointment in terms of the end of the season because he had that upset win last week. Just couldn't get it done this week. Still had good performances. He still really has a solid base. And I feel like I'm going to say that about every team, but I feel like every team really does have a few pieces where they can build off of. Key Brian Hayes, who he got for free from me. Josh Bell, who he got for free from me. Really good pieces that he can start building with. Alec Thomas, who I like a lot. So he knows where the weakness is, and if I'm Connor, the first thing I'm doing when trading opens is looking around to see who's got an arm that is available, and that's where you kind of got to start, in my opinion, if you're Connor.
And Bragton, what did you see with this matchup?
Yeah, I like what Paul said. A lot of Connor's trade deadline acquisitions stood out. Like, I know Tommy Edman had 40, Nick Castellanos 26, Jeff McNeil 52. Like, I mean, I think Paul's right. I think Connor has a solid base, and he's got a lot to work with this summer, which I feel like Connor right now is where I was at this time last summer a little bit, where you got some guys, but this will be a pivotal offseason for him. I think that he can make a lot of things happen, and a lot of really interesting things could happen for him. But Cody, I believe now is I mean, I always say he's the class of the league, and he was my preseason pick to win, and I still think that that's possible. I think that Cody will probably win the league because of just how deep this entire roster is. Like, it's crazy to me. It's just like Paul was saying, you got the best player at every position almost. So, I mean, it's a well-oiled machine that I think has a serious chance to win it all. So, we'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah, for Connor, 305 offensive points. That's what you want to put together a solid week. The arms really let him down. But again, and we say this every week about kind of the bottom tier of the league right now. They've got the bats. The arms is the problem. I know Connor knows that, and I'm sure this offseason he will be working to address the discrepancy in arms. For my guys, 502 points offensively. I mean, couldn't be more happier. Other than maybe did that a week too early. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping I can kind of carry that into round one of the playoffs. But definitely thrilled with that kind of offensive performance. And I'm looking at the pitching, and Paul's right, 293. I'm a little shocked it was that low. If you take a quick glance at my arms, I had one pitcher go negative, Emerson Hancock with -2. Everybody else was solid. Glasnow 44, Logan Gilbert 29, Kyle Bradish 43, Jose Barrios 28, Sandy Alcantara is so back 28. I had Clayton Kershaw had a good start, 18 points. Manuel Clase and Devin Williams. I don't know how it all equates to 293, but I guess it does. But I think it was a solid week, top to bottom, for my team, close to 800 points. And going into round one of the playoffs, I've been at that 800 point mark for about the last 4 weeks, I believe it is, and that's what I'm going to have to beat Paul next week, or this week that we're on round one of the playoffs. If I can't get there, I'm in serious jeopardy. So we will move on now. Let's discuss the Tampa Tarpons and Hartford Yard Goats matchup. This was a matchup I think a lot of people had their eyes on. Can Jamie or Jaime step up and take down the number one dog? That question was answered pretty matter-of-factly with the Yard Goats scoring 799 and taking down Jaime's Tarpons 627. Braxton, I will let you go here. What did you see with this old withering away team?
Well, I mean, it just I don't really know what to say other than like John Haidt went 19-0. Congratulations. The last team that went 19-0, I don't know. Cody, did you win a playoff game that year? I don't know.
Thank you for bringing that up, Braxton.
I genuinely don't know.
I did not. I did not.
Wasn't trying to diss you. I'm just saying that John. There's no guarantee John Haidt wins a playoff game, which is that was the point I was trying to make, which would be really funny if that didn't happen. But obviously, that I'm not rooting for it. It's just, what do you call it? I'm just teasing him. But he's had the best team all year. He's earned the number one seed in a bye week, so no pressure this week, and we reseed at the end of this, so we'll see who John Haidt gets to play after the end of this first round. But right now he's earned a well-deserved week off, so we'll see what happens. But I think that Jamie can still compete with anybody, and his first round matchup will be interesting as well, because he's got game breakers, 97 from Bobby Witt, 69 Corey Seager, 54 from Tatis, 409 points overall from the bats. Just some of his pitchers let him down. Cobb -1, Gausman -2, Kopech -20. Jesus, but Bobby and Bryce Miller combined for 66. That makes me feel really good about myself. So yeah, I mean, Jamie's got dudes. I think he can hang with anybody. We'll see what happens this week, but. Congrats to John Haidt on 19-0. So.
Absolutely huge accomplishment in a league. Last year I went 19-0. The league at that time, I think Paul and Bracton would chime in on this, was not as competitive top to bottom. And so for John Haidt to do that this year, huge for him in the Yard Goats. Paul, what did you see with this matchup?
Yeah, for sure. Last year, 19-0, still a good accomplishment, but wasn't nearly the caliber of owners, in my opinion, in comparison to this year. So John Haidt going 19-0 this year is just kind of unbelievable, actually, and a really, really good accomplishment. I was looking forward to this matchup, though. Excuse me. Because this could be a potential championship matchup preview. In my opinion, these are two of the three best bats, top to bottom in this league. I think the other one being Cody's team. And it was really interesting that it was 487 to 409. So Jaime's strength was still outscored by 80 points, which to me just tells you exactly how strong John Haidt's team is, that he took the strength of the other team and still beat it by 80 points. And then the pitching matchup wasn't really even close, about a 100-point difference. So obviously John Haidt rolls into the playoffs as the 1 seed. They have the bye and probably the favorite to win it all. But we'll see. It's one and done in the playoffs, so we'll see. Your weekly Shohei Ohtani update, 43 points. So maybe John Haidt can take this bye week and try and get Shohei Ohtani to go back to the scoring over 100 like he has been all year.
Yes. Ohtani is washed, and we'll move on from there and go to. See, do we have any other playoff implicated matchups? I don't believe we did. We've got 2 more matchups to discuss. We will talk about Smell and the El Paso Chihuahuas victory over Scott's Richmond Flying Squirrels, 505 to 477. Was a close matchup. Bracton, what did you see with this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying all the whole year about how much I like Scott's, like base. We've all been talking about that and how we think that everybody's got bats and everything, but Scott especially. I mean, Ryan Mountcastle, Bryson Stott, 48-37. Got Sal Frelick and C.J. Abrams and Royce Lewis and Tristan Casas, Francisco Alvarez. Like, this is a legit young team of bats. I think it just, like we've said, the pitching just is just not there. 65 points total from this pitching, and Johnny Brito and Tristan Beck going -14, -18. It's just not going to cut it, and he knows that. I mean, I think he's got a lot of work to do, but I think that he's loaded with talent bat-wise, and he's got some good minor league assets. But as far as Smell goes, he kind of made a push for the 7th seed as well, but I think he was out of it after last week when Paul beat me. It was kind of a foregone conclusion that he was just going to be in. But I think that Smell, like everybody else, has a lot of good pieces and more minor league assets to work with than most. So I think that Smell's going to be a very active person this offseason because he's got 3 or 4 legit pitchers. Like Kodai Senga and Freddie Peralta each got 37 this week. Dylan Cease, I don't know what's going on with him. He only got 6, but he's still a big name, and I think he might be hurt. Maybe he takes the offseason and gets a little bit better, and we'll see what happens. Maybe he gets traded, but the point is Smell's got people, and I think both these teams are going to be in really good shape.
Absolutely. And Paul, what did you see with this matchup?
Yeah, so I'll say it pretty clearly and frankly. Scott's bats right now could be in the playoffs. Only his bats, but that lineup of bats can compete with me. It can compete with you, Cody. It can compete with it could even compete with John Haidt. It's top to bottom really solid, and he's got pretty decent depth. He's got youth, CJ Abrams, 22, I think. Casas, 23, 24. Francisco Alvarez, same thing. So Sal Frelick, these guys are young. I mean, that's a really solid core that he has built. So now it's the same thing I said about Connor's team, just to the nth degree. Day one of the trades opening back up, go find some pitching. And Scott knows that's what he's got to do. Just go find it. For Smell and his team, if he had one more win on the season, I think he would have tied me and he would have had the tiebreaker. So he'd be the 7th seed. So it's tough to, lose that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I'll echo what Braxton said. He's got really good players. He's got good bats. He's got good arms. There's not a whole lot of tinkering he probably has to do in order to get his team up back into get into the playoffs for next year. But we'll see. It's a long off season. A lot of things can happen.
Yes, yeah. Smell had a good year. He finished at 8-11. Definitely left. Probably he would say this some wins out there that could have got him in as that 7th seed. But all in all, I think he kind of put things together. And what was definitely a tough opponent. I look for him to build off of that this offseason and go into next year as certainly a playoff contender. And as for Scott, I mean, you guys hammered it. I mean, 412 points. Jaime's got one of the best bats in the bat offensive units in this league, and Scott outscored him last week. And and I'm not looking this up, but off my memory, Scott's offensive performance has been up around 400 the last 6, 7, 8 weeks. So I mean, it's not a fluke to see this. It's a consistent performing squad. And again, the problem with his team this year is he probably has the worst stable of pitching. So as Paul mentioned, definitely got to be a focus this offseason. If you need pitching, you better go get it. If you have pitching, I would put it on the block because there's going to be a lot of suitors for it this offseason. So we will move to our last matchup of the regular season, Week 19. The Kannapolis Cannonballers, Homco, gets the win against Dave's Red Wings, 515 to 458. Paul, quickly, what did you see with this matchup?
So Homco finishes the season with a win, which, he deserves it and then some. That team's just really good. If there's one team that missed the playoffs this year that I think you can bank on making it next year, it's Homco's team. Just super unlucky this whole year. And I speak from a team that also was pretty unlucky this year. But yeah, it's pretty close between me and Homco for most unlucky. So definitely look for his team next year in the playoffs. Dave, it's the last time I'll say it. He's got a good base too. He's got a good core with Torkelson, Riley Green, Jarren Duran. He's got good bats and he has some decent arms. They're a little on the older side, but I mean, older arms are consistent. You know what you're gonna get. So it'll be of probably every team that missed the playoffs, I'll be most interested in what Dave does because Dave's just a really solid owner, and he kind of has a vision for things. He's got good prospects. Maybe he'll try and move a prospect or two to get a bat or two, arm or two. But it'll be interesting to see what he does because there's nothing set, in my opinion, of what Dave can or can't do. He can build up his arms and try and focus arm heavy this offseason, but there might be a lot of people going for arms, so he might just say, well, I have enough decent ones. I'm going to make my bats a top 3 lineup of bats in this league and roll with bats and take the Jaime method. And obviously it's worked for him. because he's in the playoffs. So, of all teams, I'm most interested to see what Dave does this offseason.
Absolutely. And Braxton, what did you see with this match?
Yeah, my best friends, the Detroit Tigers, combined for over 100 points for Dave out of his 271 offensive points this week, which is absolutely ridiculous. Spencer Torkelson had 4 home runs. It's just like you can't make this stuff up. Dave's got some good pieces, as you guys have been saying, but if Torkelson's legit, then that's somebody you can build around. I bailed way too early on him, so congrats to Dave on that. But I think that there's definitely – I think I agree with what Paul was saying about Honko. Yuri Perez is a dog. Tanner Bibby's a dog. Like, he's got some legit pitching with a lot more on the way. So I really like where both these teams are at. Dave, like you said, very shrewd, very smart person, smart owner. So is Homko. So I'm really, really excited for everyone's first offseason in this league. That's going to be really interesting. So we'll definitely see where things go. But Dave's got a good group with the Tigers. So.
Absolutely. And as for Homko, as Paul mentioned, good to see him in the season on a win. It really been a tough go of it this year. Homko's first season in the league. Really, really, really strong team, top to bottom. We've been kind of bragging on this roster since the second podcast we did. 2 ties and some really close losses. He lost a couple matchups where he scored over 700 points. Just a couple things go his way, and his record would have looked much, much different this year. So I think Homko is going to go in the offseason, prepared to shape this team up even more and really be a force to reckon with next year in the regular season. That will conclude the Week 19 review. We're going to jump in now and discuss the end of season awards that we will give out in the league. Kind of the way this process will go is after the championship week, I will begin taking nominations from the league for the specific awards we're going to give out. Once when the nominations come into me, we'll look at them and the top 2 or 3 nomination getters will go up on a poll, and the league will vote for who they think should win that award. Right now, the LM spoke briefly last night. This is kind of early in the process of this. We have 4 awards that we're going to give out. One we can't give out this offseason. It's going to be the comeback team of the year. The reason we're not going to give that out this year is there was so much turnover in the league from last offseason that a lot of the owners in this league, this was your first year here. So it would be difficult to kind of navigate who is the comeback team of the year. But, in the future, that's going to be an award that we nominate, vote on. It would just go to the team that basically, from worst to first, kind of had the biggest jump from where they finished the season prior to where they finished the current season. So that's an award that we will give out. The other award we're going to give out, I think a lot of people's already talked about it, is Manager of the Year. Everybody can nominate who they want for that. Whatever you think qualifies somebody as Manager of the Year. It could be somebody who maybe did the most with the least. It could be somebody who, like John Haidt, who just built a dominant squad, goes 19-0 and beats everybody. It could be a guy who made a ton of trades to get himself positioned where he is. Whatever you think qualifies someone as Manager of the Year is who you can nominate to be Manager of the Year. Paul, I'll put the pressure on you first. Who would you nominate to be Manager of the Year right now for this season?
So I'm going to have 2. And unless something crazy happens during these playoffs, it's just going to be 2. My first nominee would be John Haidt. Obviously 19-0, and in this league with these owners is just absolutely incredible. Just doing what he's done this year, building an absolute monster of a team. And it really started in this past offseason. Just really props to him, kudos to him. The second nominee would be me. Last year I was, I think, 17-2. Had a really good team. Lost first round of the playoffs. So I kind of went this past off season, and built it up a little bit more just to see what I could do with it. And then I started the season, I think, 2-2, and I said, well, I see John Haight's team, I see Cody's team, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to beat those teams with the roster I had at the time. So I decided to blow it up. I didn't know what that meant for me for the record for this year. And I kind of just said, I'm just going to try and build this team through my minors, build up as good as I could build it. And whatever my record is this year, oh well. I'm building now for 2024 and beyond. And I feel like I did that. I have the two top prospects in baseball with Jackson Holliday and Jackson Chourio. I have at least a top 2 pitching prospect with Ricky Tiedemann. And I have guys that I've, identified early on in the year that weren't really top prospects, but now are pretty solidly in the top 100. So I think that, in my opinion, I've built the best farm system in this league. Maybe Chad will take that over after the draft in February. We'll see. But as of now, I think I have the best farm system in the league, and I managed to win these last 2 weeks to get myself into the playoffs as the 7th seed. So even in a rebuild year for me, I was still able to make the playoff, get a 7th seed, and I think, and we'll see what happens this week, but I think I'm going to challenge Cody, and I don't know if I'll win, but if I can take Cody down to Sunday, then that's in my book, that's a win for me. So yeah, I'm not going to toot my own horn and plead a case other than what I've just said. If people want to vote for me or nominate me, that's fine. I would appreciate it. But that's kind of my pitch, and that's definitely the 2 people that I'll be nominating.
Braxton, who would your as of right now nominations go to for manager of the year?
Obviously John Haight is going to be in consideration for everybody's, but I feel like Paul, even before listening to that, I feel Paul would be my obvious choice for number 1. I have another though. I think that Tita deserves some recognition here because he inherited a really bad situation from the Abe team. Abe just came in and absolutely dismantled a championship roster from the year before, and Tita just had to clean up the mess, and he did so, earning a 4 seed, I think. Is Tita the 4 seed or the 5 seed? 5 seed, sorry. So, but still, like, Tita came in and made a ton of trades. He taught me a lot about how to do business just in general. Like, I didn't understand that you can make trades to make more trades and everything. I mean, I know that, like, that's kind of an obvious philosophy, but watching Tita implement it really taught me a lot this year. And he did a lot of good work to land himself the 5 seed, given a crappy situation he was in. So I think that Tita deserves some thought for GM of the year, just based off of his finish alone from a roster that really had nothing when he took it over.
Yeah, those are great options there. I guess I'm gonna kind of echo everybody here and just kind of touch on some interesting thoughts that I had. Yeah, John Haight is definitely going to be in consideration. 19-0 in this group of owners, just an absolutely heck of a job there. That's got to have some credit. I'm gonna go with, I like what Braxton said. Tita really if we go back, and I was trying to look at some stuff that in my notes that I had from like the first podcast we did, and when we were kind of previewing where things were going to go and kind of what we thought, and I definitely didn't see the Sounds being a contender. I definitely thought more of them as a pretender at that point in the season, and 11-7-1 record. I think he finished as the 5th seed in our playoffs. That a lot of credit there. Like as Braxton mentioned, he took over a bad squad, a bad situation, and really, 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 and he did it in a way. I think it was his own way. He really didn't build this team the way that a lot of us build here. Kind of went with his own methods. Got some older guys. Tita's really good about getting that guy that nobody wants and then beating you with him. That's kind of his mantra, and it's really worked. It's going to be interesting to see. Hey, we have some playoff matchups to go. He's got a super tough opponent in the Beach Dogs this year, but I do want to give Tita some credit. And honestly, I'm going to kind of do what Paul did, and I'm going to say that you got to consider myself as that, and I'm going to tell you the reason why. A lot of owners here, for instance, Paul, which Paul did, he started this season. He didn't like where things were going. He kind of tore things down and kind of rebuilt on the fly, ended 9-10 and got into the playoffs. I was looking here on the first period of the first matchup of the season. I own one offensive bat today that I owned then, and it's Austin Riley. For pitching, I own 2 starting pitchers that I owned in the first week, Logan Gilbert and Clayton Kershaw. So, I definitely realized early on in this season, I think it was after my loss to Dave, that my team was not where I wanted it to be. I did not have home runs. I did not have power hitters. It was really, really holding me back. And I completely revamped my team on the fly and ended 17-2. I only lost one more match the rest of the way, and that was to John Height, who destroyed me that week. It wasn't even close. But, yeah, so, I definitely did the tear down, kind of burn everything to the ground and rebuild on the fly. I think Paul went a little heavier towards the farm system than I did. And that definitely shows in the farm system that he has, the number one farm system in this league, in my opinion, which is scary for a team that's in the playoffs to have that. But, yeah, I think there's a lot of deserving owners, to get there. I think the Beach Dogs had a great season. I think Hendog managed that team to a great season. I think if Hendog made more moves at the trade deadline, to kind of position his team where, in a more better spot, I think I would be beating the table a little bit more for him here. And Bra with the Vibes at 11-7-1, I do know this for sure. The team that he took over and the team that Hendog took over finished in 13th and 14th place in our league last year. They came in, they took those squads over. Huge farm systems. Both teams had huge farm systems. Both owners, Brian Hen, used those farm systems to their advantage. And, different ways, of course. Bry is all over his team, adding, dropping, moving guys around constantly. Hendog's more the patient side of things. But, yeah, definitely I think that there's a lot of people worthy of Manager of the Year consideration, that, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how the playoffs affect our opinion. We're talking about John Height right now, but if he loses next week, I think he would almost maybe lose my Manager of the Year vote too. So going to be interesting to see kind of how that plays out. The next award we're going to give out is going to be the Trader of the Year. This is going to be an award for the owner that you think not just necessarily made the most trades, but just made the biggest impact to their season based on trades. They improved a lot. They did things they needed to do. More times than not, when you see a trade posted, they were coming out on the better side of it. Paul, again, pressure back on you. I'll let you go first. Right now, who do you kind of think is worthy of Trader of the Year?
So I have two again in mind. They're not me this time, so I won't have to talk about myself, which I hate doing anyway. So my first one, I think, is the obvious one that a lot of people would think of first, and that is Tita. Tita trades. That's who he is. I don't have to talk a whole lot about it. It seemed like when we would break down trades on the podcast every week, Tita was the first name we talk about. He'd be the name we talk about the most. He'd be the last name we talk about. Tita was wheeling and dealing all season. And you had mentioned it that, or maybe it was Braxton that mentioned it, that he took over the team that Abe kind of blew up for a month. And really, as you said, Cody, when we did our season preview, nobody said that Tita was going to make the playoffs, and here he is as the 5 seed. So, he obviously gets consideration for Manager of the Year, but I think more than that, I think Trader of the Year is something that, and I'll talk about my second name here in a second, but definitely should be a nominated, voted on manager, in my opinion. Then the next one is you, Cody. Because you said it when you were talking about Manager of the Year. Austin Riley was the only bat from week 1 that you still have playing for you, which that takes a lot of trading and a lot of skilled trading, because like I had said when we were breaking down week 19, you have maybe not the number 1, but certainly a top 5 player at each position, catcher through utility, in your starting lineup. And that takes a lot of skill. I've played fantasy baseball with you since 2008, 2007, whatever it was. And I've said it for the entire time that we've played together, that you are the best trader, best manager of trading that I've ever played with in all the leagues that I've played in. Baseball, football, hockey, doesn't matter. You always seem to find a way to take a trade and win it, even though it might not seem like it in the moment. I can't recall, or even if it's on one hand you could count them, trades that you truly did not come out on top. And it just continued this year. So it's those are my two. If both are nominated, end up being nominated, I'm gonna have a real tough decision on who I would vote for.
I appreciate that, Paul. And Braxton, who would you nominate?
Yeah, I agree
for
with
Trader
what Paul
of the
was
Year?
saying. So I don't want to repeat exactly what was said, but I could see myself voting for either you or Tita. I was gonna say Tita and go on a little spiel, but Paul pretty much nailed it. What I was gonna say, I kind of alluded to it when I talked about Manager of the Year, Tita. But every trade that Tita made was strategic. Even if it was for a day, getting the player and then trading him away, he always would get more than he paid for, or about the same. So he would break even or do better than what he gave up, seemingly every time. Like, just absolute, just real, like, initiative there that he had to do because of the situation he was in. And Cody too, I didn't realize that you only had 3 starting players from your opening day roster on your team until you pointed it out. But that just makes the 17-2 season all more impressive because of the amount of turnover. But I want to acknowledge that. It takes guts to do that, completely change your team with. Even if it's different types of stars and everything coming in, it's like talking stars for stars trade, I know in the old league was near impossible. In this league, it's possible, but you got to find the right people to, like tango with a little bit. But I mean, you're never afraid to make a big deal, and I think that shows when we look at this team now. So, but the other person I want to at least mention is Scott, because I think that we've been talking about Scott's team a lot during this podcast and just podcasts throughout the year. But if we look at this team, I think he pretty much brought in every bat that we've been talking about except for C.J. Abrams and Bryson Stott. So Scott completely built this entire hitting group, and he has 27 prospects with that. So although his pitching isn't the best and everything, I still want to give him some credit for building a heck of a batting unit, and I think he's got a bright future, and I think he deserves to be acknowledged as a big-time trader in the league this year. So.
Absolutely, and that's kind of where my mind was going a little bit too, Braxton. I thought about Scott, I thought about Chad, and I'll tell you why I thought those two, and then I'm going to get to somebody else, because I think on the surface you got to say myself or Tita for the amount of trades we made, for the caliber of players that was involved in our trades. But we had that to begin with. Well, maybe Tita not as much, but like even for myself, I'll knock myself down a peg here. Like it is easy to move to get stars when you've got stars to move, right? Now, granted, I had to accumulate those stars to get them, to flip them, and do what I needed to do with my team. But still, for Chad and Scott. You take over teams like that, you cannot lose an inch of value in any trade that you make. You absolutely cannot. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find trades where they did that. And even so, just like me getting Kyle Bradish from Chad at the trade deadline, that's a move that I felt really propelled me. It was a move I had to make. It was a move. I had to bring him in. I really, really needed him. The clock was running out. But here's the thing. I'm saying all those things. Chad knew that too. Okay. And man, did he get an absolute haul for Kyle Bradish, a haul that I would not have paid 2 weeks prior. I would not have paid a week prior. I probably wouldn't have paid 3 days prior. But based on the moves of the day, what I had done to my team, I needed an arm. I needed a good arm. And Chad was the one. Hey, here I am. I've got it. You can have it if you want it, but this is what it's going to cost you. And, that's kind of how Chad did business all year long. It's a little different from the, well, my team sucks, I'm going to sell everyone off, to the, well, my team sucks, I'm going to sell people off, but I'm not going to rush to do that. Why would I rush to sell people off? I'm going to sit here and hold them until somebody gets desperate and comes and pays the price. And I think Chad and Scott both did that this year. The other team I'm going to mention, the other owner I'm going to mention, a little shout out here, and this is going to be a little sneaky. I don't think a lot of people are going to expect this, but I'm going to say this. I am absolutely nominating him. I'm going to give everybody, by the way, on these, that you can nominate 2 people when it's time for each award. I'm absolutely nominating Connor for this award. He took over I wouldn't even say a flaming pile of shit. The fire had already went out, so it was more like a smoldered pile of shit roster. And I mean, looking at it now, every trade he's made, and he can vouch at a later point, he and I discussed in PMs afterwards. I've been hyping him up with just about every trade he's made, and it's been really quiet, small moves that I don't think a lot of people notice. But you have to bring, when your team is so bad and you have really nothing to give, you really have to be careful and be slow and really just try to get in on cheap guys when you can get them. And a couple guys I want to mention that he brought in, and again, yeah, he never overpaid because he couldn't. I mean, Connor didn't have assets to overpay with. But to me, the James Outman trade stands out as a guy that he can kind of keep and build around. Alejandro Kirk, another guy he got cheap, really tough season this year. Listen, he's 24 years old. If you're a bad team in this league, guys like Alejandro Kirk are who you want on your team, right? If you don't pay a lot for them, which Connor didn't, but you hope that they bounce back and recover, and those are the kind of lottery tickets that I think is better. I would rather do a Alejandro Kirk lottery ticket than a prospect lottery ticket, is the way that I see it. The guy's got a track record of success in the big leagues. I think it's more likely Alejandro Kirk bounces back than some prospect comes up and produces. Jeremy Pena is a good get for him. He's kind of set on Alex Thomas all year long. Ke'Bryan Hayes, as Paul mentioned, I think he literally got him for basically free. Wilson Contreras, top, 8 or 6 or 7 catcher in this league. Tommy Edman was a good get. He got Nick Castellanos, who ended up being, his best bat from a production standpoint at the end of the year. And to me, like I said, it's easy to get the attention when you're moving big pieces, right? But when you don't have anything to move, but you're still able to bring in guys, Dustin May was another one that I was in Connor's PMs as soon as it was posted. I mean, phenomenal get for a team like Connor. To get a guy like Dustin May, he's hurt. I get it. You can come up with any reason in the world why you don't think he's going to be that great long term. But when, you're sitting there and your best pitcher is Tyler Miguel, I think it's pretty good to take a shot on Dustin May, long term. And again, I put him with Alejandro Kirk. He's a guy that if he gets healthy and can stay healthy, much better of a lottery ticket than a prospect. So I definitely wanted to mention Connor in that regard, and kind of the Chad and Dave and the way that they managed. And then, of course, I think myself and Tita could be worthy of nominations. Yeah. So that is it for Trader of the Year, which I think out of all the awards will probably be the most sought after, right? Who cares about being Manager of the Year? You want to be Trader of the Year in this league. The next award we're going to give out is Matchup of the Year. This would just go to whatever matchup you think was the most interesting to you, was the biggest upset, was the biggest brawl. Both teams scored really highly. Whatever you think it was the matchup of the year. Braxton, I'm going to put the pressure on you and let you go first this time. What, in your opinion, anything come to mind was the matchup of the year to you?
Look at a little bit closer, but off the top of my head, I know the 2 ties that we had will probably be in consideration for me. The Dave upset against you, just because it was so crazy, that will probably be up there for me. The one where Paul lost by 2 points, I can't remember to who, that'll probably be up there. And then, my first win against Hen Dog with my bad team, that might be there. There's a lot that I'm going to have to look at when picking this, but it'll definitely be a close one or an upset that I'll be nominating. But this is the one I'm going to have to look at a lot to pick through, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely. For me, what stands out to me off the top of my head, because I'm like Braxton, I haven't went back through all 19 weeks and examined all the matchups, but a couple that stand out to me are going to be Dave's upset of me, as embarrassing as that is. I finished 17-2. He finished 3-16. And he smacked me around pretty good. If I recall, I'd have to look it up. I think he scored over 700 points that week when he beat me. So that's definitely got to be in contention here, just in terms of, in my opinion, probably the biggest upset. Another one that comes to mind off the top of my head was the matchup where Hen Dog beat Paul by 1 point. That's definitely, you got to think about the implications of that matchup. Hen loses that matchup. He finishes 11-8, which actually puts Tita and Bry ahead of him, knocks Hen all the way down to the 6th seed, and Paul would have finished 10-9 and would actually have been closer to getting the 6th seed, and Hen actually ending up in the 7th seed if that 1 point goes different. So to me, that's a matchup that's got to be considered. Paul, what comes to mind when you think of matchup of the year?
Yeah, so definitely me losing by 1 to Hen is up there for sure. Another one that for me sticks out was last week, not this past week, but the week before, me versus Bracton. Kind of loser goes home situation. Loser goes home. If I would have lost for sure, I would have been out and Bracton would have been in. So that definitely sticks out. So I was going through while you were talking, just real briefly, real quickly. There was a matchup over the All-Star break where you and Tita both scored about 1,000 points each. I thought that was a pretty high-scoring affair.
Yeah, and I think I only won that by like 50 points, if
Yeah,
that's correct.
It was 1,000 to 950.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a crazy one for sure. And then obviously the ties would be in there. Dave's upset over Cody, obviously I think would be in there. What was the upset that just happened?
Chad beating Bra in week 19.
So that's in my opinion, that should be in there too. But that's going to be a tough one to narrow it down to just a couple. I know personally for me, my matchup of the year was against Bracton in week 18. But there's obviously a lot of good ones outside of just me. So
yes, yeah. And that was I didn't mention it, but I honestly it had kind of slipped my mind. That matchup, a lot was on the line there, and I'm sure it will get some love when we nominate for matchup of the year. That kind of concludes what the LM committee had discussed and decided on for the 4 awards. If you listen to this podcast and you have any suggestions, I do want to say, just because you suggest it, don't mean that we'll do it. But definitely think outside the box. If you've got something that you think would be a cool award for the end of season awards, let any one of us in the LM committee know, and we will discuss adding it in. Those were just kind of the 4 that we briefly kind of touched on and thought would be good end of the season awards. So if you have anything and you think it's something that we could do, definitely bring it up, and the committee will be more than glad to discuss and consider it as an option. So we will now move into probably what you've been waiting for. If you are listening to this podcast, the round 1 playoff preview. Here's how it shakes out. John Height and his old team gets a bye week. Listen, the team's old, broken down, beaten. They got to get some rest, man. Those old guys barely made it, dragged into the postseason. So we're going to give them the week off with the bye week, let them rest up. The 2 seed was myself, and I will be taking on the 7 seed Norfolk Tide. We will go with this matchup first in terms of previewing it. Paul, I will let you go first. Actually, no. I'm going to let Bracton go first, and then Paul and I will discuss this matchup. Bracton, jump in, man. What do you see with this number 2 seed versus the number 7 seed in round 1 of the playoffs?
On both sides of the teams. I think that it'll be really interesting to see the players that were dealt back and forth between the Tides and the Hot Rods go against each other. Like Adley Rutschman against Paul in the first round couldn't have been scripted any better. That as a casual bystander, I think that the number 1 storylines I'll be watching will be just the people that were traded back and forth. I think that Cody will win this week, but I don't think it will be by much. I think it will be within 100 points. Maybe 50, but like we've said a whole podcast, I think that Cody's assembled a team of guys that are among the highest at their positions. But as of right now, Paul has a a small 14 point lead. So we'll see if that holds. I don't think it will. I think each team's at one start, if I'm looking at it right. Yeah. So I goes, but I think that Cody will win by under 100 points.
All right. And Paul, I get it. You're going to pick yourself. I'm going to pick myself. But what's your opinion on this matchup? How are you feeling? What's your thoughts here going into this round one matchup against myself?
So I am not going to pick myself. I'm going to pick you.
Well, I'm going to pick you.
Well, I'm going to pick you first. So you're stealing my move. So looking at this matchup, Fantrax has it really, really tight. I knew 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, 3 weeks ago, whenever it was that I traded you Adley, that there was a high chance that I'd have to see him in the playoffs. Very, 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 very much not looking forward to that because I love my Orioles. I'm going to root for my Orioles even over my fantasy team. That being said, if you wanted to have a little bit of an off week, I wouldn't be mad at it. But I mean, your bats, like I've said this whole podcast, your bats are just unbelievable. And guys like freaking Nick Madrigal scoring 12 tonight, freaking Shea Langolier scoring 12 tonight. Like, you already have enough good bats. Peguero from Pittsburgh, 11. Come on, man. Give me a chance. So yeah, I think you'll win. I think you'll probably be around 700. My goal is to be about 650 to 700, somewhere in there. If I can do that, I'll be happy. Even if it doesn't lead in a win. I like my pitching matchups generally. Hopefully I'll get to at least 11 starts. We'll see if I can find a 12th start out on the waiver wire. I'm sure you'll be looking too. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's always fun when I go against you. The narratives in this matchup are just everywhere. Hunter Brown on my team, Adley obviously on your team. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. A week from today, we'll see how it shakes out. But no matter what happens, I'm happy how I did this year. And we'll just let it play out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not even going to pretend to be confident. I don't think any of the 7 teams in the playoffs are confident. We all are proud of what we built. We think we got good teams. We've been working all season to get these teams where they are. But hey, listen, all 7 of these owners are respectful, quality teams. Paul is the 7th seed at 9 and 10. That doesn't matter to me. I wouldn't sit here and say that I'm glad I got Paul. This is gonna be a dogfight here. He and I played, I think, what was it, Paul, 3 weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah.
I ended up coming out on top, but it was one of those matchups where I think you still scored like 700 and something points that week. And I've said it all along. 800 is my goal. That's where I've got to get to win this week, and that's what I'm aiming to. If I can get to 800, I think I'll win. If I get to 800 and lose, well then I don't know. Fuck me, I guess. I mean, Jesus, but it may happen, but we'll see. Paul's got a good team. I got a good team. This is going to be a dogfight. But good luck to Paul, man. If I lose this week, wouldn't want to lose anybody else. I'll be pulling for you the rest of the way in the playoffs.
Did you pick yourself? I didn't hear. Did you pick?
No, I did not pick a winner of this game. Hold on just a second. No, I did not pick a winner of this game. I think the winner of this game is the whole league for getting to watch these 2 teams battle it out. They're the real winners, Paul. They get to watch 2 squads go head to head. You guys are welcome. Me and Paul are glad to put on the show for you guys. They're the real winner.
For
And
free.
we will go for free too. Yeah, for free. Yeah. So we will go to let's go to the 3 seed, the Tampa Tarpons and the Rocky Mountain Bobs. To me, this is my favorite matchup of the playoffs. Two complete opposite teams. Which strategy is better? Jaime is going to sit on his roster. He's going to set his lineup on Monday morning, and he's going to see what happens on Sunday night when he checks back in. Bry is going to – he may end up in the hospital this week from just scouring our free agency till wee hours of the morning and trying to find the right guys to plug and play. He added Danny Burgers today, threw him in the lineup, got him 2 points. But yeah, that's what Bry's going to do. He's going to be all over free agency. As Paul mentioned, me and him could potentially be in the market for a stream start. Bry is going to be scouring. I noticed he picked up Alec Marsh, who had a good stream start for him today. And then, of course, Jaime on the other side just sits on his team, starts Aaron Nola, 31 points. So, I mean, I am so intrigued in this matchup to see kind of, does Jaime's kind of patient, nonchalant management style work, or does Bry's kind of over the top, management stream style kind of work? So definitely going to be interesting. Here's the deal. My pick is going to be I'm going to go with the Tampa Tarpons. I just think there's too much talent on this team, and I'm going to give the win to him. And Paul, I'll go to you. How do you see this matchup going?
Yeah, I concur that it's my favorite matchup in this week of the playoffs, because exactly for the reason that you said, that you have Jaime, who he's done for the week. He set his lineup. That's what he's going to roll with. And then you have Bry, who I don't know if he sleeps, because he's always making ad drops every hour of the day. So yeah, it's two entirely different management styles. Who's to say one's better than the other? I mean, I know which one's better, but anyway. So this probably comes down to pitching matchups. I'm kind of just clicking through here, seeing who starts against who. Yeah, I mean, Nola today, 31 points for Jaime is a good start for him. Alec Marsh, it looks like he's going to take a loss, so that's going to be a lower number. So I'm probably going to go with Jaime as well at the end of the day. But this for sure is the matchup that I'll be watching besides my own. Just because there's so much that can go either way. Obviously, Bry will have, guys coming and going all week. So it's just if he can find that magic in his streams, he for sure could pull this upset and take out Jaime. But if I'm a betting man, I'm taking Tampa and I'm taking Jaime.
Absolutely.
Disagree
and Braxton,
with you guys.
you
I think
see
Bry
this
is my
matchup?
sleeper team to win the whole thing. I know he's got some injuries right now and some pitching inconsistencies, but I believe in him. I believe in the squad that he's built. I think that his bats are just as talented as Jamie's, I think. Marcell Ozuna had a really good day today. He hit 2 home runs. So I think that I think this is going to be a closer game than people think. I think Bry's going to be in it till the very end. I also really, really believe that activity matters, and I think that Bry will be able to do what he needs to do as far as streaming goes, because I don't think Jamie will do it against him. Like, if there's a day where one of these guys gets scratched, I don't think Jamie will fix his lineup in time, and I think that's going to matter. I think every little point is going to matter. And if there's somebody that I believe can get any single point out of his squad or out of anything available to him, it's Bry. So I'm going to give Bry the win here, and we'll see. I'm rooting for him as somebody that I can see winning the whole thing. So.
Absolutely. We will move on now to the final playoff matchup. The 4th and the 5th seed, the Clearwater Beach Dogs, take on Tita's Nashville Sounds. Braxton, I'm actually going to flip it right back to you. And tell me what you think. Tell me what you see with this matchup.
My Bismarck Larks would win as many playoff games as Hen Dog. So I'm going to stick with that. I think that Tita is going to win this week an exceptional performance from Cal Raleigh, 35 points tonight. That's insane. So Tita's off to a good start. I know he had 2 starts. Let's see how they did. 31 from Jordan Montgomery, good, but then -10 from Paxton and -9 from a string reliever. So that's a little rough, but I believe in what Tita's doing. I believe in the strategy that he is going about building his team this year, and I think that he will pull it out. I think it's going to be close, obviously. Fantrax projects Hen Dog to win by 100. I think it's the opposite by 50. So,
you think Tita takes the dub? Yeah, for me, maybe on paper this is the most even matchup. That's not to say that I think that the Tarpons and the Vibes is far apart, and I don't think that myself and the Norfolk Tide are far apart. But I think this, all things considered, I think this will be the final score will be the closest with this matchup. I'm definitely going to give the advantage to Hen Dog. I think the Beach Dogs are going to win. I don't want to be sleeping on Tita. He's proved me wrong a lot this year. It's a good team. It's definitely worthy of being here. But I just think that the Beach Dogs are the better team. I think they have the better pitching. A little sneaky move. Hen called up Grayson Rodriguez during this podcast. And a start against Toronto, not great. A start against the White Sox. We'll see what happens, but I really like Hen Dog's pitching better than Tita's, and I just think that pitching carries. I think if Hen Dog's arms outscore Tita's arms by 50 points, I think Hen Dog wins the matchup by 75 points. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So I'm going to give the advantage to Hen Dog for sure. Paul, what do you see with this matchup?
So the only way I'll disagree with you, Cody, is I think this is actually the widest margin this week of the 3 matchups, and I think it's going to be Hen Dog taking it. Just looking at the pitching, and you said what I was going to say about Grayson, that he called him up mid-podcast. I mean, Grayson Rodriguez, these last 5 or 6 starts, has just been really, really good. Ever since he got called back up in middle of July. Finally calling him up for the playoffs, which I respect. But besides that, you have Max Scherzer, who has a start against Minnesota this week. Minnesota not very good. Castillo, who had 44 tonight against the White Sox. And he also has another start Sunday, so he has 2 starts this week. And that starts against Kansas City. So, I mean, you have potential of Luis Castillo dropping 90 points this week. That plus, Heaney, Minnesota, Striders going up against San Francisco. So, I mean, you have starts that easily could go in favor of Hen Dog. Plus, his bats are just phenomenal. Obviously, that we've talked about it. Soto's really good. Jordan Alvarez is back and healthy, and picking. Same thing with Bobichette. So I think Hen, I've talked bad about his team and what he did at the trade deadline, but he easily could drop 800 points this week. And Tita, great team, great season, manager of the year potentially, trader of the year potentially. But, there is like I said for our matchup last week, there is a ceiling on his team, in my opinion. And I don't think he can get into those 700s. So again, I like Tita, I like Hen. They're both my guys. But I'm gonna favor Hen on this one, and I don't think it's gonna be very close.
Absolutely. So that will conclude our round one playoff preview. It looks like in terms of the predictions, let's see. Myself and Paul picked Jaime to beat Bra. Braxton picked Bra to win. Myself and Paul picked Hen to beat Tita. Braxton picked Tita to win. And it looks like Braxton picked myself to beat Paul. I don't know that I believe Paul's prediction, and I didn't give one. So, but anyways, that will conclude the preview for round one of the playoffs. We will be back next week to talk about round two. There'll only be two matchups to discuss at that point. John Hyde has to play, so that definitely going to be interesting to see. Guys, before we end the podcast, do we have any final words? Brighton,
John
I'll
Hyde's
let you go.
lose to bye
Any
week.
final thoughts here
That's
as we wrap things up?
Happen. Yeah. That's my
Yeah. Paul, any final thoughts?
Braxton literally stole exactly what I was gonna say. I was gonna say that we haven't talked about the best matchup this week, which is John Hyde going up against the bye. But other than that, it's been a great season. I'll say again what Cody had mentioned while we were talking about the awards. If you're still listening to this podcast, those three that we will have for this year, that's kind of just what we've come up with. If you have other suggestions, please, please, please let one of the three of us know. It's nothing's set in stone. This isn't, me, Cody, and Braxton's league. It's our league. It's everybody's league. So if you want to see something award-wise, if you want to see something rule change-wise, let us know. We'll put it on the docket, and we'll get to it when we get into the off-season. But, I don't know if I said it during our breakdown, but I do wish Cody luck this week. He had said that if I were to beat him, that he'd pull for me, and that's likewise. I'd pull for Cody too. I don't have enemies in this league except for Scott, who beat me twice this year. But I like all you guys, and it'll be exciting to see who takes the crown this year.
Absolutely. We finally made it to the playoffs. I got to say, this is no shot at Braxton or Smell, but I do think the 7 best teams got in. I think that's kind of what makes the league good, right? You want the best teams in the playoffs. I think we got that this year. And again, that's no shot at Braxton. The team was so close. I think maybe he'd have done a couple things differently. Maybe if the pitching was a little different, the Larks would definitely be in that. But as it stands, with everything is the way it is, I do think we have the 7 best teams in. It's going to be interesting because, you look at these rosters. I don't see any of these teams going anywhere. But we've got Braxton, we got Smell, we got Homco, we got all these teams that's going to really be pushing to kind of get into that category this offseason. So, there's only 7 spots. But yeah, I'm excited for the playoffs. My record in this league in the playoffs is about as bad as you can get. I've never won a playoff game. And this is the first time ever I haven't been the 1 seed. So, Yeah, maybe John Height was my saving grace. Maybe being the 2 seed, I got a little better shot here. I don't know. And maybe John Height gets the bad luck. But yeah, it's been a great season, guys. And as we transition now into the postseason, we're still going to do these podcasts until the season concludes. The champion is crowned, and even then, maybe we'll come up with some creative things that we can do this all season to keep things interesting. But thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. We will be back next week for the round 2 of the playoffs. We will see you then. Thank you.